So, by now, you probably saw the video we made yesterday talking about the crazy idea that was brought up on the Spittin' Chicklets podcast. The video is here, this one. We talked about Vancouver Canucks superstar Elias Pettersson and the idea of him heading over to the Chicago Blackhawks by some metric of the imagination, either via a trade or by offer sheet or whatever. Because this guy is a restricted free agent at the end of the season, he does not have the right to just up and away leave and abandon the Vancouver Canucks 110%. There will be some sort of a compensation that Vancouver could and would get in some sort of a Pettersson departure situation. But either way, the Chicklets podcast goes out there and brings the idea up. It was NHL insider and former NHL player Matt Murley who said it, and afterwards we had a really big outcry on social media, on my own YouTube video, everywhere else you looked. People were talking about Pettersson in Chicago. Oh, Pettersson, Chicago, he's gonna go play with Bedard. He wants to go there and play with Nylander because that was an entire thing too. But what we're doing in this video, after all of that, is going over some of the responses, because yesterday we did highlight in a little kind of extra way that, hey, Elliotte Friedman, one of the godfathers on Sportsnet when it comes to NHL news and rumors and stuff like that, he went out there and responded to this entire idea. We kind of highlighted briefly what it was Friedman had to say, but in this video, I wanted to go into a bigger dive as to Friedge's comments about the entire matter, because I feel like if you dive deeper into those comments, it illuminates more of an idea of urgency. And we're going to be using the Canucks sub as well as the Rob Williams article on dailyhive.com to help us out here. So here is the piece that I wanted to highlight from yesterday. Elliotte Friedman weighs in on an outrageous Elias Pettersson rumor published by Rob from yesterday. It goes over the same stuff we had talked about. It has the clip. Don't be surprised if you see Elias Pettersson try to make his way to the Blackhawks to be with Bedard next year, Matt Murley said, adding that there's lots of talk about Nylander signing with the Blackhawks too. This is nothing new. However, the end of the article goes out there and says this: while Murley isn't a noted NHL insider, quote-unquote, Friedman didn't discredit him on 32 Thoughts earlier today, though he did say the report was premature. I've listened to Matt Murley's work, Friedman said. He's not an idiot. He hears things. I've seen the stuff that he reports. He gets information and people talk to him. But I would say this about this one. I think it's premature. Friedman then also says on the podcast that pretty much once Pettersson is ready, that's when the Canucks are going to go completely bananas and just send all the money they can towards him, hopefully within reason. I mean, I don't think Pettersson is a $12.5 million player at this moment, especially considering the season he's had this year. But either way, Friedman goes out there and spills a little bit of water on the fire that is the Pettersson and Chicago rumor. But this is all stuff that we had talked about yesterday, right? Well, that's true. So, to push this narrative along even further, what I wanted to do was go over onto the Canucks sub, because the guys over there have some really interesting conversations about this entire thing that I do think are worth bringing up. Now, this is not, a bunch of NHL insiders colliding and talking about it. It's just a bunch of people on Reddit. But I do like the idea and the conversation that they have, which is why I wanted to make this video expanding further upon it. So here's Rye the Guy, 97's post on the Canucks sub. It's the same article that we just read from dailyhive.com. If Elias Pettersson wants to get a big payday, he better start driving play, because he certainly isn't doing that right now. I'm expecting criticism for saying this, but he hasn't played up to what he's asking for. You then have a bunch of other replies debating as to whether or not Pettersson is in the top caliber of players or if he's in a shade below that. Think Matthew Tkachuk, Sebastian Aho, like that kind of territory. But then we have ourselves another reply. The fact that we all know what he's capable of and that he's not playing to that standard shows how insane of a player he can be. He's 10th in NHL scoring while playing poorly. I'd say that justifies his big payday to just keep that kind of talent in Vancouver. I mean, JT Miller is 4th in scoring, and this subreddit constantly acts like he's a dog that just took a blank on the carpet. And, yeah, that's a pretty fair point. There then is a little talk of conspiracy going on here. This probably just means things are really heating up and the two sides are a million or so apart. It's standard agent playbook, though, to go out there and leak something like this at the height of the negotiation to get the other side to put some urgency on signing for slightly higher than they're offering. And that idea is one we cannot discredit either. Let's say the Canucks and Pettersson are kind of negotiating right now. It's loose, it's on the side, it's not really the biggest focus, but let's say they're kind of strangled up. It's tied up and it's not really going anywhere. Pettersson and his party could say to the media, kind of leak it out there and eventually have this news spread to Matt Murley on the Spit and Chicklets podcast that, hey, Pettersson might want to go to Chicago. He wants to play with Bedard. He wants to do this. He wants to leave. Play with Nylander. Now that that's out there, once Vancouver and Pettersson start talking again, they pick up the phones tonight, then there's a little bit of urgency and the conversation is not the same as it was the other night. It's standard practice. This is for the plot. These agents will go out there and leak whatever to make their negotiations go a little bit further. This is exactly it, a reply says. They have a couple of offers from Vancouver, likely a shorter 4-year term deal and an 8-year contract in place, but likely the dollar amount is slightly off. So this leak is another negotiation tactic to get Vancouver to seal the deal with a higher amount. This is good news. We should hear the Canucks announce a signing pretty soon. One more reply goes out there and says this: Friedman calls the reporting premature, but he doesn't really deny it, which I think is a bit odd. As if this could be a path Pettersson explores if something doesn't get done here, but it goes against literally everything Petey has said up to this point. I'm starting to get the vibe that Pettersson is searching more to get paid now as opposed to prioritizing winning, which was always what he stated. I'm pretty confident that something will be done here, but if Vancouver makes their big swing and Pettersson doesn't bite, they need to start looking at their options immediately. I know it's the skeptic in me, being a Canucks fan for 30 years, but this is not a player we can afford to screw up on. If he doesn't want to sign here for 3+ years, we need to try and turn him into another promising center, otherwise we may as well tear it down. Miller and Suter is not an option we can seriously go forward with. Then there is another reply, kind of worrying about the idea with Nylander. If Petey is in talks with Nylander to make this happen, it's definitely concerning if one of them pulls the trigger, though I can't imagine it going well. Stacking a team up with all-star talent that eats up cap space doesn't work if there's no money left over for goaltending, defense, and depth. Exhibit A obviously being Toronto and Edmonton. So, while there are some Canucks fans that are using the existence of Murley's comments as a good thing, saying, hey, because there was a negotiation tactic that was leaked, this is a good thing. It means things are progressing forward. There are still some other Canucks fans that are a little bit concerned, not because they think Pettersson is going to leave, but because, we're Canucks fans. We're used to bad things happening to our team. Just in case this does end up leaning more so to the side of truth than fiction, then the Canucks have to evaluate their options, because if they don't have Elias Pettersson on the team long term, then what are they going to do? They have to get another center. They cannot play Miller-Suter as a 1-2 long term. That's not an option here. Imagine losing out on Bo Horvat and Elias Pettersson in the span of 2 years, or a year and a bit, excuse me. That doesn't sound ideal, but of course the Canucks would have to get themselves notice about this earlier, which is exactly what we had seen. Matt Murley going out there and leaking this out to the media illuminates the possibility of Pettersson actually leaving, which in turn, hopefully, gets the Canucks to look at their options should that actually be the case. Not because they believe it, but because they need to have backup plans. We're fans on hockey YouTube and hockey Reddit going out there speculating what could happen. Of course, the team themselves needs to be in on this too, just to acknowledge that if it does go down, they need to be able to recuperate. Unless they're super confident that Pettersson is going to resign and they're just going to throw all the money they can at him and they get the contract done, then okay, our worries are done. We don't need to talk about this anymore. But either way, I did find it interesting how the Elliotte Friedman response to the Pettersson Blackhawks rumors garnered an even bigger discussion about this entire thing in the first place. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about all the ideas we had highlighted in this video. Do you think it's actually worth it for Canucks fans to feel a little bit concerned about Pettersson maybe indeed wanting to leave Vancouver for Chicago? Do you think there could be some sort of coordinates with William Nylander? And if that does get done, where do you see this going down? Nylander over to Chicago is a much more likely scenario than Pettersson over to Chicago, in my opinion, because it is one that we talked about before. This is a thing where a superstar player is going to be a UFA in Toronto, and he wants to get paid like Marner and Matthews. So Nylander going to Chicago makes sense. But Pettersson, there are a lot more hoops and hurdles to go over since he is an RFA, and my question is really, how far is that going to go to the point that he actually does leave? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire idea, whether or not you think the Pettersson rumor to Chicago is a good thing, and what Elliotte Friedman had to say about it following the 32 Thoughts podcast. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.